But when you start out, you can't just expect everyone to care. You have to put in the legwork to actually invest time and caring and thought, and one by one build relationships.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode. I am here today with Tom Ross. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Becca. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's my pleasure. And today we're going to be talking about how to stand out, differentiate yourself, and build a community around your art. It's getting really busy in the lettering and calligraphy world, especially on Instagram, and people really wonder how to set themselves apart. So super excited to jump into that. But before we do, I just wanted to give a little introduction to who Tom is. So Tom is the CEO of Design Cuts, which is actually, Tom, you know what? I'm going to let you say what Design Cuts is because I'm going to butcher it.
Oh, wow. I'm going to go full elevator pitch. Just before I do you feel you get kind of awkward in real life when people ask you and you need to do that elevator pitch? I've been at conferences and you go from feeling super casual to like, oh no, I need to condense myself into a sentence. But yeah, Design Cuts is a community of 500,000 creatives who basically enjoy the best digital resources to help them in their day-to-day projects. So fonts and illustrations, and it's basically a giant community that geek out over that stuff and love coming up with original art and just hanging out with like-minded people. So it's pretty fun.
Well, I have a feeling that a lot of the people listening to this will know exactly what Design Cuts is because they are the kind of geeks that you're talking about. So that's perfect. And you're also the host of 2 podcasts. Can you talk a little bit about each of those?
Yeah, sure. So I am a co-host of the Honest Designers Show, which we were thankful enough to have you on recently, and you killed it. And that's with Dustin Lee, Lisa Glantz, and Ian Barnard. That's been going 2.5 years nearly. And then I've got my more recent personal podcast, The Honest Entrepreneur. So you can see a kind of theme with the honesty there. I just personally love to talk about the things we're going to get into today very transparently, very candidly. I think in a world of memes and misinformation and nonsense, it's good just to open up and share mindset stuff and creative block as well as the tactical stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. You just mentioned that on your Honest Entrepreneurs or on your Honest Designers show, one of your co-hosts is Ian
Yep.
Barnard. And I think that a lot of people listening to this will know exactly who that is because I've had him on the show and he's one of the biggest lettering names out there. And I think that that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about right off the bat, which is that I've had a lot of people on this show with really huge followings. And there are a lot of people out there doing lettering and calligraphy that have huge followings. But I think your perspective is going to be a little bit different on it. And Design Cuts is huge and has, like you said, 500,000 creatives as part of it. But you don't necessarily have this like massive following around your name specifically. And you're not you're in the lettering and calligraphy industry, but not necessarily a letterer or calligrapher yourself. So before we start talking about everything, can you give people a little indication, a little perspective on why your insight into this might be a little more unique than other people that I could have asked to come on and talk about growing a following?
Yeah, 100%. I actually was on the phone earlier to Ian Barnard and then on a separate call with Stefan Kuhns. And so my day job as part of the company is basically speaking with a lot of these huge names in the industry. And not only do we collaborate with them, but because I've got a lot of background in not just design, but also marketing, something I love to do, which you know, Becca, is try and give advice to our friends and our partners to help them scale their own business. And so whilst my personal following is relatively small, which I can explain in a second, my favorite thing in the world is to basically brainstorm and collaborate and help these people to grow what they're doing. And I've been able to do that very consistently and have a very good track record for doing that. And so I've become kind of like unofficial business coach for a lot of people, which your listeners hopefully might know in the industry. And I love that stuff. I'm super passionate about it. But also I think people need to realize it's not just about top level vanity metrics like follower accounts. So if you go on my Instagram, for example, my personal Instagram, it's got just shy of 2,500, which might sound like nothing. But if you go through the post, it's getting like 100, 80, 70, 90 comments per post. And not just that, but really, really engaged people and real diehard fans. And the reason why it's a bit smaller is because it's quite a recent thing that I've been doing, because I wanted to be heads down building my company and growing this 500,000 member base over the years. I didn't want to be shouting about here's how to do this stuff, before I really had that credibility under my belt and that track record.
Yes, I love that. It drives me
Yeah.
crazy when people, I mean, yeah, it's a thing you see all the time in the marketing world. Like I sold an ebook. Now let me teach about how to sell ebooks to people who have sold ebook. Like,
yeah,
all
I'm
of that.
a 19-year-old life coach, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
so I'm putting out an episode on my show right after we're done talking about how people should stop regurgitating other people's advice. They should only share their truth, and they shouldn't share just what other people are doing. And I think in a world where everyone's just kind of resharing sound bites of what other people have said without having gone through it themselves, including creatives, unfortunately, it can be very damaging. And I think really like owning who you are and what you're all about and leaning fully into that is a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like I mean I could talk about the business side of all of this stuff and all of that forever, but I
I
think
know you're a geek as well with that.
big time. But I think the majority of the people who are going to be listening to this conversation will be really interested to hear how Stefan, for example, or Ian grew their Instagram account like off the charts and have become super well known for all of that stuff. So maybe I'll let you kind of run away with that for a bit and talk a little bit about what you've seen working for bigger names like them.
Yeah, I'm becoming increasingly obsessed with this stuff as well. And I don't know if I think I mentioned to you when you were on our podcast, but we're doing a new series called Design Evolution, where people like these big names like Stefan and Ian and many others, we just had James Lewis on as well. And they go back to their day one on their social media, normally Instagram. And this is like years and years and years ago, where they didn't have any developed style. They were bouncing around all over the place. They had no following, no engagement, and they were figuring it out, just testing and trying stuff normally. And they walk us slowly through from that day one to where they are now over a period of like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And it's so fascinating. And the reason I wanted to do this show is I always say to people, look at your idols and go back to their first post, because seeing where they're at now is not relatable and it's intimidating. And so I wanted to turn that into a scalable show to just give more people that healthier perspective of like, oh, they're not just like some magic genie that figured it out overnight. They actually showed up consistently every day for like 7 years. They tried a bunch of stuff. They failed. Some stuff worked, some others didn't. They can see the points where they broke out and had like inflection points and growth. And I just want it to be really, really valuable for people. So that's launching hopefully it will be launched actually by the time this goes out, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to really be a good mindset shift for folk.
And that's going to be on the Honest Designers show, or that's a separate thing?
That's going to be on the Design Cuts YouTube.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm very passionate about it just because I think more people need to do that. It's so common. People fill themselves with imposter syndrome and comparison syndrome all the time, right? I'm sure you hear this from your community, and it's so destructive to our creativity. It's destructive to our mindset. We just feel really down and negative about ourselves. And it's a complete fallacy because those people you look up to probably felt exactly the same. They're just further ahead on their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say to somebody who wants to break into something like that? Say, let's start an Instagram account for an example.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say somebody who has gotten pretty good at their art, wants to make a name for themselves, but is feeling full of imposter syndrome because they log on to Instagram and their whole feed is filled with other people doing exactly the same thing and probably feeling like better than them?
There's a lot, because similar to you, I get a lot of these questions as well. And in terms of like the regular conversations I have with my followers, there's a lot of these questions: imposter syndrome, comparison, self-doubt. And for me, there's a few answers. So please, Becca, like dig in to at any moment if you're like, I want to go deeper on that one.
Okay.
I think a lot of it comes down to mindset, as I said. So I think people generally bounce around inside their own head. And that is terrible. That's where you start to get paralyzed because you feel really insecure about your work. You're a bit frozen and you actually often stop creating anything at all. And so instead of actually putting stuff out on your feed, you're on like the discover section or the feed of content of people you follow, and you're just staring at them being like, oh no, like I could never match that. And that doesn't help anything. You're not putting out anything into the world. You're just bouncing around in your head with all this insecurity. And so there's kind of two things I advise people do. One is just do. i.e. take action. Because the more stuff you're doing, the more stuff you're involved in, the more stuff you're putting out, you make yourself busier, and inherently you have less time just to be frozen and sat there paralyzed with doubt and imposter syndrome. And that can be really powerful, because I find when I'm jumping from like recording a podcast, doing something like this, putting out a new post on my feed, coming up with a creative idea for my Instagram stories, all this kind of stuff, and just experimenting, the more in that I am, and the less I'm watching what other people are doing, the better I feel, and the more I achieve.
I actually have an example, like, of pretty much illustrating exactly what you're talking about, and it's like a really top of mind thing for me right now that I think people will resonate with. Is I was on a podcast recently, one of the really big lettering podcasts. I mean, I'll just say it, Drunk on Lettering, if you've ever heard of that one.
Nice. Yeah, I certainly have.
Yeah, and they have interviewed a lot of really famous letterers and designers. And so, first of all, going on that podcast instantly gave me imposter syndrome, because I felt like, well, I've seen their past guests. I listened to this podcast. I know who the type of people they're interviewing. And so, of course, I'm like, why do they want me on there? Well, I don't fit in this, which is like a whole other topic we could get into. But then they also wanted me to create some episode artwork for it. And that's another thing, like, oh my God, all these other famous letterers have created episode artwork for this show. Like, mine is going to stand out. It's not going to be as good as everyone else's and all this stuff. So instantly, when I sit down to make this episode artwork, I look up what the past letterers have done. I go on their Instagram account and I look at it and I'm like, okay, so mine should sort of look like this, and it should fit in this feed, and it should be looking like this. And so I sit down and I start making all of these sketches and stuff that just like are not at all what I ever do in my normal day-to-day lettering. And
it's the echo chamber, right?
And it just felt like I was trying to do something that I should do versus what like I actually would do and what I want to do. So I shut down my phone, I closed my computer, I turned everything off, and I took a brand new piece of paper and I just started drawing what I would want to do in my own style, not thinking about what would fit well in their feed, not thinking about what would fit well with all the other letterers stuff. And I came up with something that I really loved. And it was like magic just happened. Like, it just came out of me so much more naturally when I wasn't looking at anyone else's stuff. I wasn't thinking about other designers. I wasn't thinking about other letterers. And it just made such a big difference. So I love what you're saying about just like, don't think about it, just do it. And don't be scrolling through everyone else's stuff. It just makes such a big difference.
So I'll give you an example. I've become pretty interested just through friends and people close to me in the whole body positivity movement, which I think is a really positive thing, right? And it's the creative equivalent of reading beauty magazines and looking at hot Instagrammers and feeling bad about yourself. And rather than either working on your own mindset, which would be the best thing, or like living a healthier lifestyle and going to the gym or whatever it might be, rather than taking any proactive action yourself, you're just staring at what these other people are doing and feeling terrible about your entire life. So it's the creative equivalent of that.
I love that. I love that comparison because it's so true. It's like bang on, exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be number one, is stop looking so much at what other people are doing, start doing more and putting out more yourself. The second thing is actually get out of your head by getting into someone else's. And what I mean by that is think more about your audience, no matter how small, or perhaps the wider audience that you're aspiring to serve. And when you start trying to empathize with them and think, what do they care about? Like, what do they find funny or sad, or what do they aspire to be? What makes them tick? When you start thinking more in those terms, then you don't have as much time again to bounce around internally yourself. And that is so much healthier because, again, not only does it stop your own self-doubt, but it makes you better at creating. So, for example, Lauren Hom, who I work with a bit, who's fantastic, she's very good at putting out content that resonates with her audience. Not only does she do wonderful designs, but the messaging is not generic. It's very like appealing to her audience. They find it funny and quirky and cute and all the stuff that she's known for, right? And she often does that by just being very in tune and having a great relationship with her community. If the whole time she was rattling around in her own head and completely ignoring her community, she'd be inherently worse at what she did, and she'd feel a lot worse about herself in the process.
Plus, I mean, it's easier. I think some people will be thinking, like, listening to this going, but I don't have an audience, or I don't have anybody listening to me. But I think that what you're saying is that you should be listening to your audience. And honestly, the smaller your audience is when you start doing that, the easier it's going to be to listen to your audience and get to know who the people actually are that are following you. Like, it's really, really hard to do that when you have a Lauren Hom size following or a Stefan Kuhn size following. I mean, you can get a certain feel, but there's a lot of people there versus if
Yeah.
you are just starting out and you can actually engage with every single person who's following you. It's a different ball
I
game.
I love that early phase. So yeah, I never accept that as an excuse. Like, my following's small. Good. Like, when I started Design Cuts, you know what I did? I made best friends with our first 100 customers, 200 customers, and beyond. Like, I can't do that with 500,000 people. I wish I could, but those times were golden because I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week to get the company off the ground, which was nuts. But I always, every single day, I managed to fit in a 1 hour phone call, one-on-one with a customer. And it was so valuable because I could jump on and suddenly it's not like this stat in my, follow account, this meaningless number. It's a real person. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh wow, like, this is a woman in Louisiana, for example, and she's showing me the work she's been doing with our resources, and that's mind blowing. And not just that, but I can have a conversation and be like, how can we do a better job for you? What aren't you enjoying? Like, what can we improve? I did that every day for about 3 months, even though I had 0 minutes in my day. And every time I would come away with like 1 to 2 golden nuggets, I used to call them, of advice, where I was like, oh my, I never would have thought of that. I wouldn't have got that from a survey or something more faceless like that. I would only get it from this format of one-on-one chats. And so when people are like, oh, I've only got 89 followers, I've only got 236 followers, it's like, how many have you actually reached out to? How many do you talk to on a regular basis? How many do you care about? How many do you actually know what makes them tick and just know everything about them? Probably very few, because what everyone does is, I like to use this metaphor of like the phone contract, right? Like a cell phone. So the cell phone companies, they're so good, they romance you in and they say, hey, we've got all this amazing deals. We're going to look after you. We're going to make you feel great. And then you sign up and instantly, they just move on to the next customer. And soon enough, your price starts getting hiked up and you feel really despondent and neglected. And it sucks, right? So why do we do that with our followers? Every time people get like 100 or 1,000 followers, do they actually get to know the 1,000 they have? No, they're normally trying to romance the next 1,000 down the line and neglect the 1,000 they have. And that's a
Or
recipe.
even worse, they've gotten some followers by doing the follow for follow thing, and then they get the follower
Yeah.
and then they unfollow them, and then it's just it's the opposite.
It's so nuts. And the numbers really, really don't mean anything. So I don't want to go like too business heavy, but we've done partnerships with people that have, and communities that have 5,000 people and communities that have over 1 million. And there was one community with 5,000, which did twice as well in terms of tangible results as one with 1 million. So the numbers are just ludicrously out of whack there. They show it really doesn't matter at all how many followers you have. Like I launched a Patreon the other day. I had 50 people sign up in the first day. It's ridiculous. I don't even have an audience yet, but with the small audience I have, I love them. I talk to them every day. Like, I know them. They're a great community. They're my tribe. So I'm not trying to chase the next 2,500, 10,000, 100,000. That doesn't matter to me. That will come over time. But I would do them a huge disservice to disrespect them and neglect the people that have already invested their time and attention in following me.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. So what would you say to somebody who is thinking this, like, okay, well, right now I have 100 followers, but my goal is to grow it to 100,000 followers. So if I'm supposed to do that by becoming best friends with every single follower, well, that's not scalable.
Yeah, I think people worry about scalability when that is literally not an issue for them. It's like, I can't possibly respond to every comment because that's just going to burn me out. It's like, how many comments do you get? 2? It's like, okay, I work with some people that get 400 comments a day and respond to every single one. Yeah, exactly, right? That's when you can complain about scalability and kind of hack at that and find some workarounds. But don't worry. That's like saying, oh man, it's going to be so tough when I'm a multimillionaire. You're not earning any money yet. It doesn't make any sense. So, be unscalable. I love the unscalable. That's some of my favorite stuff in the world. I try and implement that all the time with our team here. the whole business is patently unscalable, because I think often that's where so much of the magic happens, right? It's so fun. Like we do the stuff you do. I saw what you're doing on your Instagram. You're doing like the handwritten notes. You're doing all the like wonderful touches on every single delivery you send out to your customers that delight them and make them smile. And those moments of delight you can't automate. You can't have a system in place. Like, yeah, you might be able to hire people or get your friends to help or whatever it might be, or just work longer hours, but you can't automate that. And how special is that for people?
So I feel like from a business perspective, there are a lot of ways to do that stuff. And I think it is obviously really important to both of us are on the same page about, you know, engaging with your customers and engaging with all of that. But from someone who's just trying to get followers, how, like, you and I could send somebody a message and say, like, what could I do better? Did you enjoy this? Or what can, you know, how can I help, like, make your life easier, kind of thing. But from somebody who's just posting their art and trying to gain a following around that, how would you suggest they go about, like, engaging with their people?
2 key ways. One is DM every single person and say, thank you so much for following me. Make it personal, use their name, etc. And just say, I really appreciate it. Let me know if there's anything that you would love to see from me in terms of work or stuff that would inspire you, or, you know, and it depends how small you are, right? When you're super small, let's say you're a letterer, you could literally do like a customized piece. If you've got 30 followers, then for that month, put out a daily post and do a customized piece for each of the 30 followers, right? And make their day. Again, you can't do that when you've got a following as big as yours, Becca, but that magic's in the early days. And so you can go super unscalable. Like literally you could be on a call with each one of those followers. You could do something that was like a lovely gesture. You could stalk their profiles and be like, oh, it's their birthday, and like be like, happy birthday, Becca, in the piece you put out, and tag them up. And they'll be like, oh my God, this is crazy. And that's how you create fans, right? Is by going above and beyond like that. So I really, really love those moments. I love those gestures. I just started doing one on my Instagram, right? Where I pick one community member each Monday. And I just literally invented this yesterday at the time of recording. And I started a series of my stories called Make Them Smile Monday, where I put it in my story and say, I think this person's really talented and cool. Let's go make their day. And everyone in my audience go and comment on this post. And this person who was getting like 4 or 5 comments a post got something like 124 comments in a day, and was like messaging me with like crying emojis, being like, this is insane.
Well, and that's like, what happens when you have that engaged following, because if you've done that for somebody, then that person's still in your audience. And when you ask them to do it for someone else, they're going to do it because they know how it feels, you know? So you starting really small grows that all of those people know exactly what it feels like to be special or be honored by you, you know? So they're going to pay it forward. And it works in like exponential ways to grow your tribe and have people more engaged with you.
It's karma and it's hard work. So it's paying it forward. It's doing the right thing. It's treating people well. It's caring about them. And that's great holistically. But what's different is when I'm kind of falling asleep and I'm messaging people back because I don't want to neglect my DMs and comments, or when I'm rushing home from work and I'm in the elevator, so I'm trying to squeeze in 5 comment responses even though I just want to sleep. And I'm not saying like that's not going to be the right fit for everyone, right? I have aspirations of building like a giant over time audience that's hyper engaged and turning that into something game changing. A lot of people out there just want a bit more recognition for their work. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would be like, man, I would love to get like 10 to 14 comments on my Instagram post just telling me that I'm actually doing a good job, because that feels nice. And that's not judging. I need that validation. This is probably, this is like getting psychological. This is probably why I do everything I do. Just so it's like 500,000 people, like, just like me. I need validation. Good job. I was like that in art class at school, right? I needed the teacher to be like, well done. That's great. Because I almost couldn't believe it for myself. And I'm happy to admit that. I don't care if that sounds insecure.
No, I think it's just, I mean, honest is the word. And that's how you brand your everything is honest. And I think that if most people are being honest with themselves, either you are putting your stuff on Instagram because you want recognition, or you're not putting it on social media at all because you really genuinely don't need that recognition. But most people, if you're putting something, especially your art, on Instagram, it's probably because you want feedback on it. And ideally you want good feedback on it. But some people, maybe both, I don't know.
And I know what it's like, especially in the early days. You get that little notification, not even a comment, just a like, and you click on the heart to see your notification. Who liked it? Who liked it? I got a like. You know, you're watching it like a hawk.
But
And
if you're doing that, then what you're saying is you click on that like and you see who liked it, and then you send them a message. You don't just
yeah,
ignore it.
exactly. You go deep, right? So you go and check out their stuff, and you leave like really nice, supportive, meaningful, truthful comments on their work, and you show some love back. And so the way I think about it, and this really is unscalable, but let's say you've got 50 followers. For them, it just takes a minute for them to comment on your stuff. But if you go and comment on all 50 of their latest pieces, that might take you an hour or 3 hours. But that's the game, right? It's disproportionately unscalable your way until it starts to shift. And as you build momentum and that kind of stuff, then people start coming to you. But when you start out, you can't just expect everyone to care. You have to put in the legwork to actually invest time in caring and thought, and one by one build relationships. And one by one is the whole key. And this is not like some marketing spiel, right? This is nice. This is fun. I'm doing a workshop soon at Birmingham with Ian Barnard called Marketing for Creatives. And everyone is so obsessed with scalable, like we touched on before, Becca. And I call this all the time shouting into the void. Tell me if you've ever felt like this. You're on social media and you're just posting it out and you feel like you're just shouting into the wind because it's so busy and noisy out there. It just gets lost instantly, right? So you're just bellowing out there like, I hope someone cares. Look at this thing I made. Why does no one care? And then you get nothing back. And it's really disheartening. Have you ever felt like that?
Oh my God, yeah, all the time. And honestly, I wanted to say this earlier too when we were talking about something else, but when you have that many followers, it makes it that much worse when you feel like that.
Yeah, it doesn't go away when you hit a certain follower
Oh
count, does
God,
it?
no, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Because then it gets ridiculous. Then it's like, oh no, I only got 6,000 likes instead of 15.
Exactly. Not that, I mean, those numbers are a little off for me, Tom, but someday I'll get there.
But yeah, like I'm obsessed with just flipping that. And so instead of always thinking like, I'm going to shout out to millions of people and hope that a bunch of them care, I think community gets built one person at a time. And that's not only an effective and practical way to do it, that's a bit more controllable, but it feels better too. Because when you do what we're talking about and you go and build relationships one person at a time, it's like making a new friend. So if you made 10 new friends a day, each friend you're building out your network, right? These are people you're chatting back and forth, you're DMing, you're commenting on each other's stuff. And the next day you go and do that with 10 more people, but you don't neglect the 10 you already have. And just person by person and by person, you bring them into the fold and you make them part of your community and you care about those people as much as you can. That for me is way more controllable than just putting something out to the world and kind of crossing my fingers that it blows up or goes viral or people like it, because that's ludicrous. That generally is never going to happen, right? Unless you have a massive audience. And so that person by person approach is just, it's practical, but it's so nice when you get those people that you're putting out good vibes to come back and be super friendly and receptive and care back. And like I say, it's like making friends. It's just,
well, it just makes, like, as much as that, people always ask me this too, because I'm the same. Like, I try and genuinely respond as much as I can, talk to people as much as I can. And it's not just on Instagram for me, it's a lot of email, Facebook groups and stuff like that. And I get the question all the time, like, Becca, when do you sleep? Why are you doing this if you don't need to be answering? Like, hire somebody to answer those things for you and stuff like that. But I have to say that I've thought about that. It gets exhausting. It's really a full-time job just answering comments and being that, like, genuinely engaged with people.
Community managers exist, right?
Yes, but I have to say that it fires me up more when I'm doing that versus when I'm not engaging with the people. Like,
Yeah.
I like you from the very beginning engaged with people a lot. Like, the first time I ever ran my Show Me Your Drills challenge, which is my free calligraphy course, there were, I think, 100 people signed up for it. And I knew all their names. Like, I put all of their email addresses into my Gmail and I sent them all emails. Like, it was a very manual thing and I knew them all. And then as it continued to grow and grow and grow, it got like a little bit out of hand, but I still, it fires me up more than anything to talk to the people. So if I outsource that, or if I ever decided like, okay, I'm big enough, I don't need to do that anymore, then the joy is taken out of it for me.
And
So
I
as much as,
guarantee your brand would possibly go backwards as well, to an
and so,
extent.
yeah, so as
If
much
they
as it's,
see,
as
oh,
much
I
as
guess
it's
she just doesn't care anymore.
yeah, exactly. And so as much as it's unscalable, I don't care. Like, I will build that into my business because that is the most important thing I've done for my business.
So can I ask you a question, Becca?
Maybe.
Have have you talked about this stuff on this show, on your own show before, to this
No.
extent? Okay, because I bet a lot of your community listening are probably right now thinking of like nice gestures and small moments of interaction they've had with you that matter to them. And I love that, because for me, it's like planting seeds. And I'm sure you work the same as I do with this. I do this all the time, and I do the gesture and I never look back. As in, I'm not checking back to be like, did they thank me? Like,
Yeah.
did they get back? Well, that would be unscalable, and I'd have like the longest spreadsheet or whatever. I just can't be bothered, right? So I just put it out there, and I put it out there, and I'm sure like some people never get back to me. Others just get back and they're like, yeah, thanks, and it's maybe lackluster. And then
Or
others get back and
people, there are people who just assume that it's not you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like all of that stuff happens, but equally, I'm sure you also get it where people send you a video message back and they're like, you just made my day. This is amazing. Like, and they're the people that you want to pay attention to. And I think it really compounds when you do this day in, day out, even if it's just like 12 times a day, little gestures here and there, little moments, comments, DMs, whatever it might be. When you do that every single day, pretty soon over a period of years, you've got thousands or tens of thousands of moments. And that, I think, is how you build reputation and brand, among other ways of doing that, right? That's a really powerful strategy. So suddenly when people think of you, it's like, oh yeah, they're like the lovely person that supported me in this way. Like that person I did the make them smile Monday thing for, right? That was a spontaneous thing. It made me smile as much as them, to be honest. I just enjoyed it. But I'm sure if someone mentions my name in their presence or says what's Tom Ross like, that's probably what's going to spring to their mind, right? That little seed that got planted. And I'm not doing it for like nefarious reasons of like, well, I expect my brand equity to grow 0.1%. It's a side effect. I do it because it's the right thing to do and because it's fun and because you can get creative with it. But it's a beautiful side effect that actually is a really savvy community building and marketing tactic.
Well, that's what I wanted to say next, is that I feel like there may be somebody listening going, well, that sounds sort of disingenuous if you're like planning to sit there and just answer messages or message all your fans so that they love you and that they like your stuff more. But no, like I said a minute ago, that's genuinely one of the parts I love the most about my business, is like jumping in and talking to people. And it's why I started the thing in the first place. So it's not, yeah. Like,
yeah, me too. And no matter what the business benefits, I don't think you could fake this. If you really didn't enjoy doing it, it would be too much work. Or to do it at the scale we do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because I like kill myself doing this because I try and do it at scale. I'm getting like 40 to 50 people DMing me a day with like essays and super long questions and giving them free consultancy around my day job for no money. Like on paper, it's crazy. But I love it. I really love it. Like when I run up to my girlfriend and I'm like, oh, look, this person's like doing so much better because I helped them. Yay. Like it's the thing. I'll be watching Netflix and my hand, like it's possessed by the devil, goes to my phone and picks it up and starts doing this stuff because it's my default. And so I'm sure there's going to be some people listening being like, okay, well, good for you that you're passionate about that. And Becca, you're passionate about that. But I just want to do calligraphy, right? I don't really care about that stuff so much. And I think that's a valid concern. So I'm not saying everyone should become like a full-time community builder, but I am saying that there's ways to fit that into what you do enjoy doing. So if you like lettering, like I say, maybe you do a lettered gesture for your community. Maybe you're not there trying to build this tidal wave of DMs every day, but you're just doing the odd nice thing. I mean, hopefully everyone listening enjoys being nice. I'm not saying you need to be like a super slick marketer doing that. I don't think we are at all, but just
no, but from
yourself,
a, yeah, and from a lettering, like I know that one of the other things that letterers and calligraphers often struggle with when they're starting an Instagram account or they're trying to post more is what to letter, what to do calligraphy, like what words to practice and all that kind of stuff. So what you're saying, I think we'll see a wave of people starting to letter each other's names and stuff like that. But it gives you built-in content, like use that content to engage with your audience and use that as a way to inspire you for what to actually post about and stuff. I love that.
Should we get tactical quickly, like little quick fire tactical?
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you, I mean, I don't know what tactics and stuff you have in mind, but I was going to ask you, like, in all your experience of working with, let's say, letters, calligraphers specifically, because I know you've worked with a lot of them, what are some of the, like, coolest and smartest and just most, I don't know what the word is, most effective ways that they've been doing unique things to grow their following?
Sure. So the one that springs to mind straight away is Homework from Lauren Hom. I think that's genius. So for anyone that's not familiar, she does a weekly challenge where she will set a homework assignment, give an overarching theme, and then people go and letter around that theme, tag her up so that you can kind of track it and everyone in the community can follow what one another are doing.
Let me just go right ahead and interject here and say that one of her homeworks was like I was her guest feature once.
Yeah.
And it was dad jokes and everybody got to letter dad jokes.
And I bet that was amazing, right?
It was great.
Although no one could topple you as the queen of dad jokes. Although for the record, listeners, I have found a kindred spirit in Becca because I too love dad jokes and I regularly embarrass my whole team about them. And I can't wait to have kids so I can, subject them to it as well.
Tom, I've recently been like really obsessed with teaching people the benefit of eating grapes. Mm-hmm. It's all about raising awareness. Okay. Back to Homework.
Yeah, but just before that, I mean, I did watch a documentary the other day about what held ships together. It's riveting.
That's a real dad one because only dads would know boat stuff.
True. I mean, speaking of boats, though, I did start a yacht business in my attic recently. Sales are through the roof.
I haven't heard that one. I love that.
We can go all day.
We could. Okay, but we were talking about what Lauren has done so well with her homework stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's genius. I appreciate not everyone listening is going to be able to do that. She has got a bigger following, but you have to start somewhere. I'm sure she didn't have thousands of people doing it when she started it. And so maybe you just start it with like your close circle of friends and people in your community. Maybe there's 12 of you doing it every week, but you spur each other on. And that's like a fun thing to be part of. So I think that can be super smart. Yeah,
well, like I said earlier, when the first time I ever ran Show Me Your Drills, and I think most of the people who are listening to this will know what Show Me Your Drills is. So I have run that program many, many times now, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now there's thousands of people who take part in it. But the first time I ever ran it, I think I had 1,000 followers, maybe, probably even less than that, and 100 or so people who participated in it. And you guys, it was crap. Like it was I posted this one prompt on Instagram that is crap and it's still on there. So like Tom said at the beginning, go scroll all the way back.
On the series, we're going to expose that for the greater good.
Yes. So go scroll all the way back, go see that and understand that like when I first did this stuff, I wasn't trying to get thousands of people in there when I only had a small number of followers. I was just trying to do something that I think the people who were following me at the time would appreciate, and it worked. And then the next time I made it better, and the next time I made it better. So like, just stop thinking about the initiative you want to do or the project you want to do needs to be perfect. It can be totally imperfect and iterated over time.
And remember, it's not how many people you have, right? It's how engaged they are.
Yes.
And it took me a lot of years to figure this out, but that's insane that you had 1,000 people, 100 people or more participated. That's not normal for everyone listening, but that's testament to what Becca and I are talking about really does work. Because equally, you could have 10,000 people and not a single one of them did it if you hadn't been nurturing them and caring about them in the right way.
And what's that? Sorry, Tom, I keep interrupting you.
No.
What's that 10, is it 10 true fans or 100 true? It's 10.
1,000.
1,000.
1,000 true fans, yeah.
1,000 true fans. But I think that
Yeah.
the same is true for any number. Like if you said 10 true fans
Mm-hmm.
and if you had 10 followers and you make them all true fans or even true friends, that's going to grow exponentially. And that's exactly what happened with me and Show Me Your Drills. Like,
yeah, you have to start somewhere, right? Just as you said that, I had to bring up my Instagram because I posted this yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. It said, I'm not in the likes or follows game. I'm in the fans for life game. And all of my actions map to that. I suggest you start investing the time/care to cultivate true fans, as they have 1 billion times more longevity than a viral post. Plus, they will make you a lot happier.
Yes,
So
exactly. That's exactly what we've been talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like Show Me Your Drills, like homework, people really like a regularity, right? They like a series, and they also like a sense of community. That's just part of being a human being. I think humans really like rallying around something. It's why even this first effort at like Make Them Smile Monday worked really well, because suddenly everyone was getting involved and seeing each other get involved. And there's something really beautiful about that when it's public and it's community based. And so I would think around your work, what is something that you can do to get your community involved? You know, just some way where you can kind of show them some love. And if they do get involved, absolutely start like resharing them on your stories and shouting them out and just trying to build a bit of fanfare around it. Don't be a hermit, and encourage your community not to be hermits either. So if you operate in this private bubble where you never really share that much stuff, you certainly don't go and interact with your community, you don't really talk to anyone, and you don't put yourself out there, not that much is going to happen. But the more you do, the more action you take, the more you put yourself out there, that's where the magic starts to happen. So when you're resharing people's stuff, you're going and commenting on their posts, you're connecting them with each other, where you're like, hey, Becca, have you met Sally? Like, you know, you two would get along. Like, just more doing, less scrolling and feeling insecure about yourself. That's like the thing I want. If you're going to take one thing away from this episode, it's like, please stop scrolling on Instagram and feeling sad, and instead start connecting with people and making friends, because it's going to be a lot better. So that would be one thing. I know this has worked incredibly well for me, actually, and I've seen it work with letterers and all kinds of people on social media. Think about, I know this is audio podcast as well as YouTube. Is that right, Becca?
No, it's just YouTube.
Okay, even better. So I'm going to do this with my hands, right? Which looks kind of crazy, especially because I'm like elbowing my microphone. But I always think about this kind of upside down triangle, wide at the top, and then it gets super narrow at the bottom. So if the top is like everyone, like either everyone in your community or the wider lettering community or whatever, that's the broad bit. You want to try and get as narrow as possible. And I'm really obsessed with doing that, because the people in the narrow part are the people you want to really invest the most in. So let me give you an example of this. I have my following. That's like 2,500 right now. When I put out stories, only a portion of those people watch the stories. But by watching the story, that shows that they're more engaged than an average follower, right? They're more engaged than the people that don't watch the stories, generally speaking. So that whittles it down a bit narrower. Out of the stories, let's say I have a poll or an ask a question or something interactive like that, only a portion of those people that watch the story are going to participate in that. And then if I DM everyone that participated in the poll, then only a portion of them are going to get back to me. And out of those people, maybe some are like, yeah, thanks, and it doesn't go any further, but some, the conversation continues, right? So it gets very easy, because I remember having this conversation with Ian Barnard. He was like, I've got too many followers. First of all, I was like, oh, boo-hoo.
Oh,
what
poor
a terrible
you.
problem. And I love Ian, by the way. He's a good friend. I swear I regularly like razz on Ian on other podcasts just to tease him, because we do it on our show as well. But Ian's great, sweetest man in the world.
It's easy because he's so nice. He doesn't
I
fight
know,
you.
right? He is literally a delight. So so Ian was saying, like, he has too many people. Like, how can he actually like boil down to the ones that matter? And that is one example of many, right? You want to give people the opportunity to effectively like hold their hand up and say, I care, and identify themselves. And so suddenly you're not shouting into the void with your own audience. Let's say you've got 100,000 followers and you're like, everyone needs to care about this. You're putting something out there that lets them say, hey, I care enough to do that. And then you go down a level, and I really care, so I'm going to do that next thing. And then I really care, I'm going to do that next thing. And so you can map that relative to your own audience. Obviously, you don't want to give them 1,000 hoops to jump through if you've got 30 followers. But with an audience of your size, you can almost make it like a treasure hunt where it's like they have to kind of go and do something difficult, but at the end there's like an unbelievably delightful thing waiting for them, because you basically want to say, you're one of my most engaged people and I want to reward you in a massive way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's super helpful.
And then you can have fun with it. So yes, that's maybe more on the marketing side, but the reason why I'm doing workshops and teaching like marketing and creativity is marketing alone, I tend to hate, or I certainly hate the negative aspects. Like, what is marketing, right? It can be perceived as sleazy, disingenuous, using people, extorting money from people, all these horrendous things. On the other hand, you've got creativity. And what is that? Like, I mean, there's positive and negatives there. The negatives are maybe like broke artist, right? Starving artist, that kind of thing. But what are the positives? Like kind, creative, fun, empathetic, like innovative, just creative flair, like all of these things that I love about creativity, I think need to be meshed with marketing, because then it's the best of both. It's like the stuff that works and can actually help you build something meaningful, along with like the fun creative flair. And it's such a beautiful marriage. Like, I'm literally hoping to do a talk at Creative South about this exact topic. I love the marriage of it, because for me, they amplify each other, right? They make each other so much better. And in a world where some marketers are killing it, but their branding looks hideous and they're like kind of coming off as a bit sleazy, I love when people like you and Lauren Hom get it right, because it's not only like, you know, helps you grow something big, but it's delightful for your people. When they're getting like a hand calligraphed thing in the post from you, like I saw in your stories, that is delightful. They're not getting that from like internet marketer McGee, you know, that they're getting like the sleazy sales email. So I love both, like the best parts of both mashed together.
Yeah. And
I'm kind of rambling here just because I'm so passionate about it, but
no,
you know.
no, I love it. I could ramble about this stuff forever. First of all, funny story about me doing calligraphy on everyone's packages. It is delightful until you hand letter 500 packages and the post office puts a sticker on top of every single hand lettered name.
What?
Every single
That
one.
happened yesterday?
No, this was previous orders.
Oh man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that sucked, but I learned from it. I'm doing it on the inside of the package this time. But yeah, there's that. But what I wanted to say was that, I mean, we're talking about marketing. I think most people, when they hear, especially people who are just concerned with growing a following, when they hear the word marketing, they're like, oh, well, I'm not trying to sell anything. I just want more likes on my art, you know?
And great. Like, there's
but
nothing
that
wrong
is
with selling
marketing.
stuff.
You need to be marketing to get those people into your audience.
Yeah, it is marketing. So let's go a little bit deeper on like how to get people to engage and care and how to grow stuff around your work. Because you asked before and I felt I didn't go deep enough maybe.
Cool, let's do it.
All right. So I think differentiation is huge. And I'm really, really obsessed with this. And I know it's become a bit of a cliche buzzword, but we talked recently with Dina Rodriguez about this, about authenticity. And I think she's a fantastic example of that. I think you are as well. But that is really like leaning into your true self and not being ashamed to share it. And the way I see it is we all put a filter up, especially when we're online. I think we put a filter up in day-to-day life to an extent as well, depending on who we are around. But certainly online, we have this bizarre filter where we're not quite being ourselves. And often, especially if we do like a video of a selfie or something like that, and we're talking on camera, often in the early days, your friends might say something like, that doesn't really seem like you, or like, you're coming off kind of weird. And that's very natural because it is a hard thing, right, to drop that filter and just to unabashedly share your true self with the world. And it's quite scary. It takes real bravery. But like anything else, I think it's small steps. And so when we talked with Dina recently about this, she didn't get there overnight. You know, she got there with small steps, but now she is the woman who like shaves her head and like models all her own clothes and is like, look at me, like this is who I am and my clothes are freaking awesome and you should buy them. And she's like doing all this stuff about nudity and body positivity and feminism, and we're smoking weed and everything.
Getting herself banned from Instagram, but
yeah,
in a
exactly,
good way.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like the rebel in the group of people that I know. So I love that. And whenever I see her stuff, it sticks in my mind so hard because she's not like getting lost in the sea of noise that exists. Because as you alluded to earlier, Becca, it's so busy out there, especially in the lettering world. And so if you're just another person who's doing the generic, like lost in the woods or whatever over like an unsplash photo, why would anyone follow you? Because it's like they can get that in a billion other places. Like, what is special about your account? And when we've been doing this design evolution series, James Lewis is a prime example. He went through some more generic phases, but where he really started finding traction is when he started niching down into that like sign painting, but with the 3D lettering and doing logos, and no one else. I think now there's more people kind of ripping it off, but virtually no one was doing that at the time. So it was very easy to stand out. And I think people always worry about those two things. They worry about niching because they go, oh, but I'm going to be too limited in who I reach. And again, they're normally the people with like 80 followers, where it's like, have you really got that much to risk? Like, probably not. Your followers are still probably going to support you. It's not like you, where if you pivoted your entire aesthetic and business model, you have a lot on the line, you know? So I think embrace that freedom when you are smaller, you're earlier in your journey. Like all these greats, try a few things, flirt with a few ideas. And so just by experimenting, I think you're going to kind of develop your own style. You're going to hopefully gravitate towards something that is a bit more unique, because remember, you're not looking at what everyone else is doing. You're kind of just iterating and focusing on what you like to do. So if James Lewis can blow up and get this huge success from doing like very specific 3D style with a paintbrush of logos, I'm sure that you can pick some kind of niche that seems to be true to your heart and that you love to do, and at least give that a good go, rather than just trying to put out something that's entirely generic. Because then no matter how good your technical skills are, I think you get a bit lost.
And I think it's actually easier to do that right off the bat when you're really small than it is to start trying to think about like, oh, how should I differentiate myself once you have a really big established following already? And not only that, but if you're really specific about who you're trying to target, it's more likely that that person will see your stuff and go, oh my God, I have to follow this person. As opposed to just like, oh, this is kind of nice art, I guess I could follow them. You know, you go into a store and it's like, you see a book that's like cats wearing purple polka dot socks. And you're like, oh my God, my uncle loves cats and purple polka dot socks. I have to buy that book. It's like the same. You're only going to get like 5 people who will buy that book, but those 5 people are like, I need this book. You need to be in my life. You know,
I really hope that's a legitimate example, by the way. Your uncle's listening at home. He's like, hell yeah, I do.
I have no idea where that came from, but it's like good.
That's a niche, people.
Get the idea, yeah.
I think another thing along those lines is there's different ways to niche. And Dina, again, talked about this recently. And I've been trying to put this out for a long time. It's not just about the aesthetic. It's not just about what you share. It's about the message. And often that cuts through the noise a lot better than the aesthetic does. So it's great if you think you're going to niche down by having like brown card framing every piece on your Instagram, and that's going to be your aesthetic. Like, that's fine. That might serve a purpose in terms of like a bit of the differentiation. But if you are the one who's like being super outspoken about something that's passionate to you, like in Dina's case, feminism, body positivity, weed, whatever her things might be, whatever is your stuff, like, you know, just try and put it out there and don't filter yourself and don't censor yourself. And again, don't get there overnight. Like, that might be terrifying to you. You're like, but I can't share that. That's super crazy. But, you know, look at Lauren Hom again. And I'm trying to use like calligraphy examples, but, you know, there's a bunch of examples in a lot of spaces. But Lauren Hom, she's not doing weed and body positivity. She's doing like puns and like pretty like quirky, funny stuff, right?
Food.
Like,
she does food.
Yeah, a lot of food. She's doing like sassy and gassy and stuff like that. It makes you smile like that, right? You smile and you laugh when you see it. And so I think you need to be able to be the answer to a question. If someone said to me, hey, I really like lettering and I love weed, who should I follow? They wouldn't even finish their sentence. I'd be like, Dina Rodriguez. And if they were like, hey, I love lettering and I'm looking for something that's kind of like a bit quirky or funny or tongue in cheek or sarcastic, I'd be like, go follow Lauren, right? Because these people spring to mind, right? They stick out. And that isn't necessarily just because they have a big following. I wouldn't care if they had 1,000 followers, but that's it.
Well, and I think a lot of people are probably listening going like, oh my God, that's so overwhelming. I don't know what my my differentiator would be, or like, I just haven't figured that out yet. Well, it's not something that you can just instantly like, this is what my thing is going to be, and you do it right off the bat. But like, and actually, I just recorded an episode with Elizabeth Gray. Do you know her, The Greater Good?
I'm chatting with her either this week or next, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's been growing a huge following lately, and
she's awesome.
And you see something from her and you know exactly what it is. And I talked to her and we got all into this about why it's so important to have kind of your thing and how to kind of find your own secret sauce, as Scotty Russell would say.
Yeah, speaking of, all right, can you sum up Scotty Russell and his work in like a few words or phrases? I think this is quite an interesting exercise, and for everyone listening, try and impose this on yourself and try and do it with a circle of friends, either real life or online, and do it to each other. So if you were to describe Scotty Russell's work, do you know what you would say?
Scotty Russell's work or Scotty Russell just in general? I would say.
Well, it's Scotty Russell's work, because if it's Scotty Russell, you would just say like the nicest man on earth and like the buffest man on earth.
No, for Scotty Russell's work, I would say it's usually black and white. It's really detailed. He does a lot of pizza, cats,
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so if I were to describe Scotty's work, I would quite possibly say more or less word for word what you just said. Yeah. Exactly that. And I'm sure there's thousands of people that would do that as well. But I bet there's a lot of people, I keep saying listening, but watching. This is a YouTube show. I bet there's a lot of people watching on your channel where if they try, they actually struggle to impose that on themselves. And that means other people in their own communities are going to struggle to do that as well.
Yeah, true.
They might be bouncing around between different aesthetics, which is fine. That's all part of the explorative phase before you found your style. But I think actually committing to something is huge. I've tried to help so many of my following with this, and some have done it and some haven't. But some people literally do bounce around, sometimes for years. And it's like, please just pick one and try that for a bit. And there's no harm. You can always pivot. You can change in future if you get sick of it. But like, at least try and just develop something in like a bit of a narrower lane. I think that can be really important to standing out.
Yeah. So for anybody who's listening, I think by the time this episode with you, Tom, airs, the one with Elizabeth will have already come out, and we got into all of that. So I think that'll be really helpful for people if they haven't heard that one yet. Cool. But Tom, I'm going to let you go. You're a super busy man. I know you got your, what time is it there?
It is 6:45 roughly. I told you I could talk about this stuff forever. I lost track of time.
So did I. I could go on forever too. But before we kind of wrap up, I just want to do.
Can I give like a 2-second tip? Is that all right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what would be kind of your like last minute tips for people?
Okay, make it more about your audience than you. So of course your art's an expression of yourself, but like I say, try and get more in their head than you are currently. And some really interesting things can start to happen. I think double down in terms of actually be proactive in terms of paying attention more. What's working? So Stefan Kuhns, he's like a machine with this, right? Very analytical guy, much more so than myself, but he will reverse engineer success. So he will pay attention to all the engagement and what's engaging the most, and then he'll go more all in with that. He'd do more of that, and he'd do that not with just with his own work, but with wider work. So he'd be on the discovery section, and then he'd be like, "Oh, that stuff keeps going really viral. So I'm going to try and take that and steal that a bit and put that in my work, and then I'm going to monitor the results." Right? So he does that to a very extreme level, but I think we can all do that better, right? So I'm starting to do this way more. The amount of stuff I try every week, I think instead of just churning out the same old, have room for a bit of experimentation each week. So maybe 80% of your time is like doing the same consistent stuff, but you've got 20%, which is like fun playtime, right? So
and you got to be okay with it if it fails too.
Completely fine. And what happens when you do that is you're constantly iterating and shifting towards something better. Because again, it compounds. Let's say you do that for 2 or 3 years in a row, where every week you're just doing more of what works and less of what doesn't. Then you kind of lose that stasis that a lot of artists have, where they're just fixed in one position and not really getting any kind of traction because you're constantly moving the needle. Yeah. And that's not marketing, that's creativity. You can literally be like, oh, people like that style more than that style, so I'm going to do more of that.
100%. Well, so many good tips. I feel like this conversation can't be summed down into a couple words. The people need to watch the whole thing. But I think if we were to give people one piece of homework when they leave this, What would it be?
Go and have one-to-one interactions with people. Again, this is relative to your following. So if you have 129 followers, DM them all and see what starts coming back. If you have more than that, then try and find little touch points for your most engaged people. So maybe it's the people that are like watching your stories. Maybe it's the few people that are engaging on your stuff. Whoever it is, find that group, go to their post, start showing them some love, DM them, start to build relationships, and watch what happens. You'll get so much positivity back. Your engagement will start to rise. You start to build this momentum, and that's just going to propel your feeling of inspiration and wanting to put more stuff out there.
Awesome. I love it. That's such good homework. And
Cool.
Speaking of following people on Instagram and social media, where can people find you? And I challenge people to also send you a DM.
Oh, okay. Well, can I do you one better on that?
Yeah.
All right. So if you, I did this on Scotty Russell's podcast and it was amazing. So if you enjoyed this episode, go to Tom Ross Media on Instagram and DM me saying that you listened to the episode, but include a question or something you're really struggling with right now. And I will guaranteed get back to you, quite possibly with a video response. This is Unscalable, right? And I will do my absolute best to just help you as much as I can for free.
I love it.
No strings, just because I'm a geek and I like doing this stuff. So that would be Instagram. Otherwise, I would love if people could check out what we're doing at designcuts.com. And again, in this mention, you're going to see everything I just talked about in the episode. We thought, what's something nice we can do for our members? We put together something called the Ever Expanding Design Bundle, which is currently at about 16 products. These are popular products that we made for free, contributed by people like Ian Barnard and all these amazing creators. And we add one thing to it every single month. So literally every month it's just growing and growing and growing. And you just get it where it's like, this is our thank you for you being part of our community because you rock.
So what kind of stuff is in there, just to give people an idea?
It's got fonts, it's got graphics packs from like Lisa Glanz and people. It's got Lightroom presets, it's got overlays, textures.
Procreate brushes?
Procreate brushes. We have just started adding those as well. So I think there's definitely some in there. It's got, it's like this little free, well, I say little, it's this giant free toolbox. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Perfect. I mean, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on. I think there's so much value in this episode. People are going to lose their minds, and I can't wait for them to start messaging you and you to have to pull a couple all-nighters to answer them all.
So mean. No, thank you so much for having me on, Becca. It was such a pleasure. I always enjoy chatting with you, and yeah, I'm so glad.
All right. Well, we'll talk more in some Instagram DMs later, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Okay. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.